I never imagined that loneliness could push me toward something so unexpected. My marriage had become a shell of what it once was, cold, distant, routine. My husband, always preoccupied with work or buried in his own world, barely noticed me anymore. We shared a house, meals, a bed, but not much else. Conversations had become surface level, and the intimacy we once shared felt like a distant dream. I kept convincing myself that this was just what happened with time, that the spark always faded eventually. But deep inside, something in me still yearned to be seen, to feel wanted, to be touched not out of obligation but out of desire. And then there was him, my stepson. He had this quiet confidence about him, a certain awareness that caught me off guard. It started off as nothing more than fleeting moments, a glance here, a lingering look there. I brushed it off as harmless, telling myself I was imagining things, projecting feelings that weren't really there. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more aware I became. His eyes would stay on me just a beat too long, his presence always felt, never intrusive, but always there, like he was watching, waiting for something neither of us dared to name. One night, after another silent dinner and another evening where my husband retreated to his own corner of the world, I found myself alone in my bedroom. The stillness in the house was heavy. I assumed my stepson was in his room, probably immersed in whatever distractions young men lose themselves in. I didn't expect anyone to interrupt. I let my hands roam, searching for something to remind me I was still a woman, still capable of feeling. The tension I had been carrying for months spilled over into that moment. I was so deep in it, head spinning, breath quickening, that I didn't hear the door open. And when I did, it was too late. He stood in the doorway, not moving, not saying anything at first. His face didn't show shock, not in the way I had expected. There was curiosity there, maybe amusement, but something else too, something unreadable. My heart thundered. I scrambled to cover myself, but it didn't matter. He had seen me, all of me, in a way no one had in a very long time. The air between us became thick, charged with a silence that said too much without a word being spoken. I told him he shouldn't be there, but my voice was weak, unsure. He didn't flinch. He just looked at me, calm and composed, as though he had walked in on something he already suspected. There was no embarrassment, no awkward retreat, just a quiet control that made my skin tingle. I told him to go. He hesitated for a moment, holding my gaze, then turned and left without a word, shutting the door softly behind him. I sat there in the silence that followed, my breath shallow, my body still buzzing. I should have been horrified, ashamed. But instead, something stirred in me, something forbidden, electric. I lay awake the rest of the night, the memory of that moment looping in my mind, the ache inside me refusing to fade. The next morning, I couldn't meet his eyes. I avoided him completely, unsure of what had been set in motion, or if I had the strength to stop it. I could still feel the heat on my cheeks as I sat across from my husband at breakfast. He was buried in his phone, completely unaware of what had happened the night before. If he knew, if he even had the slightest idea what his son had walked in on, everything would fall apart. I kept my eyes on my coffee, hoping the warmth would calm the storm inside me. But even then, I could feel my stepson's gaze from across the table. He wasn't avoiding me. In fact, it felt like he was watching me more closely now, studying every move I made. The way he shifted in his chair, the glint in his eyes, it all felt deliberate, like he was silently testing me to see how I'd respond under pressure. Then my husband looked up, his voice cutting through the heavy silence to ask if I was okay. I forced a smile and muttered that I hadn't slept well. A soft chuckle slipped from my stepson, barely audible, but it sent a chill up my spine. He knew exactly what had happened and exactly how to make me feel it all over again without saying a word. I spent the rest of the day trying to stay out of his way, but somehow, he was always near. Reaching for the same drawer at the same time. Brushing against me in the hallway. Every touch felt like a calculated accident, every look charged with something unsaid. The space between us felt like it might crack open with the weight of whatever this was becoming. We didn't speak of it. But the tension spoke loudly enough for both of us. Later that evening, I was in the kitchen, cleaning up. I sensed him behind me before I even heard his footsteps. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. I tried to act normal, focused on rinsing the dishes, but my hands were trembling. Then he said it, softly, like a dare, that I didn't have to act so nervous. I paused for a split second before answering, keeping my back to him, pretending I didn't know what he meant. But when I turned around, the look in his eyes made my breath catch. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't confused. He was intrigued. I told him what happened was a mistake, hoping those words would shut this down. But he stepped closer, his voice low as he asked if it really was. That should have been the moment I stopped everything. I should have drawn the line, made it clear that whatever tension existed between us needed to end. But I didn't move. I just stood there, letting the silence grow heavy between us, letting his words hang in the air. Then he reached past me, casually grabbing a glass from the cabinet, and as his arm brushed against mine, the line between right and wrong blurred just a little more. Even the slightest touch from him sent a surge through my entire body. I clenched my fists, silently begging myself to pull away. This couldn't happen, but he didn't move back, and neither did I. A voice in my head kept asking why I wasn't walking away. And the truth was, I didn't want to. Because for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt noticed. Desired. Seen not just as a woman, but as someone who mattered. That scared me more than anything. Before I could say a word, my husband's voice called out from the other room, asking if I was coming to bed. That snapped me back to reality like a slap. I quickly stepped away, putting space between us. My stepson didn't say anything, he just looked at me with an unreadable expression, something between curiosity and certainty. I walked off, but the weight of his gaze stayed with me long after I'd left the room. The following days felt like I was walking through a storm I couldn't escape. Every time we were alone, the air felt like it might ignite. He didn't act awkward or uncertain. If anything, he became bolder, moving with a confidence that unnerved me. My husband, as usual, was busy with work, unaware of the silent tug-of-war playing out under his roof. I tried to fight the temptation, but each moment made it harder to ignore. Then one evening, my husband casually mentioned he'd be out of town for a couple of nights. I nodded like it meant nothing, but deep down, I felt everything shift. My stepson sensed it too. The unspoken barriers were gone. That night, I curled up on the couch, pretending to watch a movie, but my mind was elsewhere. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, and when he entered the room, I didn't look up, but I felt his eyes on me. This time, he didn't sit across the room. He sat beside me, closer than necessary, so close our arms nearly touched. I felt my body tense, but I didn't pull away. He asked a simple question, his tone calm but laced with suggestion. I let out a shaky breath, trying to keep control. Then he leaned in slightly, his arm grazing mine, and told me to stop pretending. I should have gotten up and walked away before the line between right and wrong blurred completely. But I didn't. I stayed, caught in the gravity between us. When his fingers lightly brushed the side of my hand, it was barely a touch, yet it sent shivers through me. I turned to face him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wrapped around us, thick with tension, pulling us closer. I whispered that this was wrong, and he looked at me, eyes darker now, his voice low as he asked why I wanted it then. I had no answer, none I could say out loud. And before my mind could stop what was happening, my body gave in. His hand moved slowly to my thigh, and in that moment, I forgot every reason I'd tried to hold on to. It was reckless, it was forbidden, and yet, I had never felt so awake. I gave in to the pull between us, to the fire that had been quietly smoldering for far too long. Every touch reawakened something inside me I hadn't felt in years, something raw, buried beneath years of distance and routine. This wasn't just about desire. It was about being seen, being wanted in a way that reminded me I was still here, still capable of feeling. For a moment, I heard that inner voice urging me to stop, but it was no match for the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. Boundaries blurred and crumbled beneath the weight of our choices. And by the time I fully grasped how far we had gone, it was already too late to turn back. Hours passed like a dream and a storm at once. I lay beside him, staring up at the ceiling as the reality of what we'd done began to settle over me. The heaviness was suffocating and intoxicating all at once. I had crossed a line I once swore I never would. But what disturbed me more than the act itself was the absence of regret. Morning arrived too quickly. I woke tangled in sheets that didn't belong to me, my body still humming with the memory of every touch, every whispered word. But my mind had already begun to spiral. I looked over at him as he slept, peaceful and completely at ease. He had no regrets. I could see that, and I almost envied his calm. My heart beat erratically as I slid out of bed, gathering my clothes in silence, each movement echoing like a betrayal, not just to my husband, but to the life I thought I still had. When I stepped out of that room, the guilt hit hard and fast, yet buried deep beneath it was something I didn't want to admit, a thrill I hadn't felt in years. I tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. But he didn't. At breakfast, he was different, more assured, more possessive in subtle ways. The way he looked at me made my pulse race, a silent reminder that this wasn't just some mistake to sweep under the rug. He knew it, and he wanted to make sure I knew it too. Later that morning, my husband called. His voice grounded me with details of his trip, his work, everything that filled his world, except the one thing that should have mattered most. He didn't know that while he was away, his wife had done the unimaginable. I forced myself to speak like everything was fine, but inside, everything had changed. When I ended the call, I turned, and there he was, leaning casually in the doorway, watching me. That same knowing smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. It sent a cold shiver through me. Because I knew then, whatever had started between us wasn't over. Said, his tone almost casual. I crossed my arms, trying to place some kind of barrier between us, to put space between the rising heat and my unraveling sense of right and wrong. This is insane, I whispered, more to myself than to him. He just shrugged like none of this was strange. Maybe, but it happened. I swallowed hard, trying to summon strength I wasn't sure I still had. It can't happen again, but he took a slow step closer and asked, "You sure about that?" I wasn't, and that was the problem. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to shut the door and lock it before any more damage was done. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I had crossed a line, and some part of me didn't want to go back. The rest of the day I avoided him, stayed busy, kept moving. But none of it mattered. The damage had already been done. Every time I blinked, I felt his touch. Every time he walked by, my body responded instinctively, like it was no longer mine to control. I couldn't stop replaying what had happened, his hands, his eyes, the way he made me feel. That night, my husband came home. He was cheerful, exhausted, and completely unaware. He wrapped his arms around me and told me he had missed me. I smiled, trying to be the woman he thought I still was. But behind him stood his son, watching me with that same gaze, unreadable to anyone but me. His eyes held a secret that neither of us could ever speak aloud. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could pretend nothing had happened and carry the weight of betrayal in silence, day after day. Or I could give in again, knowing full well it would destroy everything we had built. As my husband pulled me in close, I felt nothing, no spark, no warmth, no connection. But when his son brushed past, letting his fingers barely graze my skin, my breath caught. My heart raced. I had already chosen. Thank you for walking through this deeply emotional journey with me. Stories like these aren't just about scandal, they're about the silence so many live with, the loneliness that goes unnoticed, and the choices we wrestle with behind closed doors. If this story spoke to you, made you reflect, or simply kept you gripped, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another chapter. There are more raw, real, and revealing stories on the way, and I'd love for you to be here for every one of them. Until next time, thank you for being part of this space. Disclaimer: this story is a dramatized narrative created for entertainment and reflective purposes. It explores themes of emotional conflict, infidelity, and personal struggle that may not be suitable for all audiences. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised. The intent is not to encourage or glorify betrayal, but to open up conversations around human vulnerability, relationship dynamics, and the consequences of the choices we make. Please watch responsibly.